On March 15, 2024, at exactly 8:43 p.m., I sat in my basement office surrounded by 12 monitors displaying every room in my $18 million Newport mansion when I heard my son-in-law Marcus Chin laugh through the speakers and say, "The old man won't last much longer anyway, maybe 6 months max, then it's all ours. $92 million just waiting for someone smart enough to take it." He was sitting in my living room, his feet up on my $75,000 Italian leather ottoman, drinking my 1947 Chateau d'Yquem worth $8,000 a bottle that I'd been saving for my granddaughter's wedding, a granddaughter who didn't exist yet, while planning my demise with my only daughter Victoria as casually as ordering takeout. They didn't know about the military-grade security system I'd installed 3 years earlier, with 4K cameras and studio-quality audio recording in every room, all feeding to servers that backed up to 3 separate cloud services every 15 minutes. My name is Charles Pennington. I'm 72 years old, former CEO of Pennington Defense Technologies, and this is the story of how I turned my son-in-law's greed into his complete destruction, transferred $92 million out of reach in 24 hours, sent him to federal prison for 22 years, and saved my daughter from a marriage built on lies while he thought I was dying of pancreatic cancer. I should start by telling you about my life before the betrayal, back when I still believed that family meant something sacred. I built Pennington Defense Technologies from absolutely nothing in 1979, starting with a $10,000 loan from my father-in-law at 18% interest and a patent for a radar component that everyone said was too complex to manufacture. I was 27 years old, working out of a converted garage in Warwick, Rhode Island, soldering circuits by hand until my fingers bled, sleeping on a cot next to my workbench, living on ramen noodles and determination. That first component, the PTX-1 frequency agile receiver, would eventually be in every military aircraft in the Western world, from F-16s to Apache helicopters, saving countless lives by detecting threats faster than any existing system. The company grew slowly at first. The first year, I made $47,000 in revenue and lost $23,000. The second year, $180,000 in revenue, $12,000 profit. But by year 5, the Pentagon had noticed us. A $2.3 million contract for the Navy's new destroyer program changed everything. By 1990, we had 200 employees. By 2000, we had 2,000. By 2010, we were a defense contractor with $400 million in annual revenue, 3 facilities, and technology in every branch of the military. When I sold to Lockheed Martin in 2015, the deal was worth $1.3 billion. After taxes, early investor payouts, and employee bonuses, I made sure every single person who'd been with us more than 5 years got at least $100,000. I walked away with $492 million. But money was never the point. The point was building something that mattered, something that protected the men and women who protected us, something that would outlast me. My office wall had photos of soldiers whose lives were saved by our technology, letters from pilots who detected threats in time because of our systems, families who got their loved ones home because of what we built. That was wealth. The money was just a byproduct. My wife Eleanor and I had been college sweethearts at MIT in the early 1970s. She was studying biochemistry, brilliant enough to have 3 professors fighting over who would supervise her thesis. I was in electrical engineering, spending 18 hours a day in the lab, dreaming of circuits that could think faster than humans. We met at a Vietnam War protest in 1972, ironic, given what I'd eventually build. She threw a tear gas canister back at the police while I was trying to calculate its trajectory. We spent our first date in the campus medical center, her treating my tear gas exposure while explaining polymer chemistry. I proposed to her using a circuit board that lit up to spell "Marry Me" when she completed the connection. She said yes, then improved my design to make it more efficient. We married on June 15, 1974, in her parents' backyard in Providence, with 17 guests and her mother's homemade wedding cake that tilted dramatically to the left. Eleanor wore her grandmother's dress, altered with her own hands, and looked more beautiful than any woman had a right to be. Our honeymoon was 3 days camping in the White Mountains because that's all we could afford. We made love in a tent while it rained, planned our future on napkins in a diner, and promised each other that money would never be more important than meaning. Eleanor died on September 3, 2018, at 3:47 a.m., from a cerebral hemorrhage that took her in her sleep. She went to bed complaining of a headache, kissed me goodnight, said, "I love you, Charles. Always have, always will," and never woke up. The doctors said it was quick, painless, that she likely felt nothing. But I felt everything: the absence of her breathing beside me, the cooling of her skin, the way her hand went slack in mine. In her nightstand, I found a letter she'd updated every year on our anniversary, always titling it, "If you're reading this." The last version, dated 2 months before she died, said, "Take care of Victoria. She's more fragile than she appears, more easily influenced than she should be. Don't let your money become more important than your memories. And Charles, don't die alone. Find someone to watch Jeopardy with, even if they never get the science questions right like I did." Victoria was our only child, born on April 22, 1981, after 3 miscarriages that nearly broke Eleanor's spirit and had us consulting fertility specialists across the country. Each loss was devastating, the first at 11 weeks, the second at 14, the third at 9. Eleanor blamed herself, though the doctors assured us it wasn't her fault. When Victoria finally arrived, healthy and screaming at 8 pounds, 3 ounces, we cried for an hour straight. Eleanor held her and whispered, "You're our miracle. Our only one. We're going to give you everything." And we did, which might have been our first mistake. Private schools from kindergarten through high school, Wheeler, then St. George's. Summers at camps that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Violin lessons with the Boston Symphony's first chair, though she quit after 2 years. Equestrian training at farms in Virginia, though she was afraid of horses. We threw money at her childhood like it could buy happiness, not realizing we were teaching her that everything had a price tag. She was smart though. Brilliant, even. Yale undergraduate, graduated magna cum laude with a degree in political science. Harvard Law Review, graduated in the top 10% of her class. She could have clerked for a federal judge, could have joined any firm in the country. Instead, she chose legal aid, working pro bono cases for immigrants and the indigent. Eleanor and I were so proud. Our daughter was using her privilege for purpose. Or so we thought. She met Marcus Chen at the Preservation Society of Newport County Gala in September 2019. I was receiving their Lifetime Achievement Award for restoring 3 historic mansions. Marcus was there as someone's +1, but you'd have thought he was the guest of honor from how he worked the room. 6 feet tall, marathon runner's build, that kind of aggressive handsomeness that made older women remember being young and younger women forget to be careful. He had that Stanford MBA magnetism, that Goldman Sachs confidence, spoke Mandarin, Spanish, French, and English with a kind of accent that suggested expensive education rather than immigrant roots. His story was compelling, I'll admit. Parents immigrated from Taiwan when he was 5 with nothing but suitcases and determination. Father worked 3 jobs, mother cleaned houses. Marcus got into Stanford on a full scholarship, worked his way through, graduated top of his class. Goldman Sachs recruited him straight from business school. By 32, he was a vice president pulling down $800,000 a year plus bonuses. The American dream personified, or so it seemed. I remember their first date. Victoria called me at 11 p.m., giddy like a teenager. "Dad, he's amazing." He quoted Proust in French, then explained mortgage-backed securities in terms even I could understand. He ran the Boston Marathon in under 3 hours. He volunteers teaching financial literacy in Chinatown. He's perfect. Nobody's perfect, I warned her. Especially people who seem perfect. But she was smitten. Marcus knew exactly how to play her, intellectual enough to engage her mind, ambitious enough to impress her, vulnerable enough in sharing his immigrant story to trigger her savior complex. Within 6 months, they were engaged. The proposal was at the Breakers Mansion, during a private tour he'd somehow arranged. He got down on one knee in the ballroom where Vanderbilts once danced, offered her a 4-carat diamond that must have cost him 6 months' salary, and promised her a life of adventure and accomplishment. The wedding in June 2021 was obscene in retrospect. Marcus insisted on the plaza in New York, the grand ballroom no less. 500 guests, including people I'd never heard of who Marcus claimed were essential connections. The flowers alone, flown in from Ecuador, arranged by someone who'd done royal weddings, cost $73,000. The reception featured a 16-piece orchestra, champagne that cost $500 a bottle, food by a chef with 3 Michelin stars. The total bill was $1.8 million, and I paid every cent because Victoria's happiness seemed worth any price. Eleanor would have hated it. She would have seen through the performance, the way Marcus's smile never quite reached his eyes, the way he calculated the value of every introduction, the way he touched Victoria like she was an accessory rather than a person. But Eleanor was dead, and I was a grieving widower trying to buy my daughter's happiness with money I had too much of. The first 2 years of marriage seemed successful from the outside. Marcus left Goldman to start his own investment fund, Cerberus Capital, named after the 3-headed dog that guards the underworld, which should have been a warning. He claimed to have raised $50 million from personal connections, but I later discovered most of it was borrowed against Victoria's trust fund, using forged documents that made her a co-signer on loans she never knew existed. He leased offices in the financial district, hired a team of young analysts who worked 100-hour weeks, and cultivated an image of the next hedge fund genius. Victoria, meanwhile, had quit legal aid at Marcus's suggestion. "You're a chin now," he told her. "We need to think about our brand." She became a full-time hedge fund wife, hosting charity dinners, attending galas, sitting on boards of organizations she didn't care about. When I questioned this transformation, she said, "Marcus says connections are more valuable than cases. We're building something bigger than just careers." The changes in their behavior started subtly in late 2023. Marcus began dropping hints about my age, my health, my isolation since Eleanor's death. "Charles, you're rattling around in that huge house all alone. Have you thought about something more manageable? Maybe a nice retirement community with people your own age." He'd send me brochures for luxury senior living facilities, just to consider. He recommended I simplify my investments, consolidate my accounts, reduce stress in your golden years. Then came the suggestions about estate planning. "Charles, you should really update your will. Tax laws have changed. Victoria should be more involved in managing the family wealth. She is your only heir, after all." He brought documents to family dinners, powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, trust modifications. Always presented casually, always for your own good, always with Victoria nodding supportively beside him. What they didn't know was that I'd installed a comprehensive security system in October 2021, just after their wedding. It wasn't because I suspected them, not then. It was because a former business competitor, angry about a deal that went my way, had made threats. The system was military-grade, developed by a company we'd worked with at Pennington Defense. 73 cameras covering every angle of my properties, audio recording in every room with voice activation and noise filtering, infrared sensors, motion detection, all feeding to a secured server room in my basement that looked like a miniature NSA facility. The system backed up to 3 separate cloud services every 15 minutes, encrypted with protocols that would take the fastest supercomputer 1,000 years to crack. I could access everything from my phone, my laptop, any device with the right credentials. I'd spent $400,000 on it, which Marcus would later mock as paranoid old man behavior, not knowing it would be his downfall. At first, I used the system for its intended purpose, security. But after Eleanor died, I found myself reviewing footage of our last days together, listening to her voice, watching her move through the house she decorated with such care. It became a kind of grief therapy, letting me pretend she was still there. Then it became a habit, reviewing the day's recordings each night, watching my life from the outside, trying to understand how I'd become so alone. The heart episode that changed everything happened on January 8, 2024. I was in my study, reviewing financial statements, when I felt my chest tighten. Not pain exactly, more like pressure, like someone sitting on my sternum. My Apple Watch started buzzing, irregular heartbeat detected. I drove myself to Rhode Island Hospital, which was stupid but typical of my stubborn independence. The EKG showed atrial fibrillation, not immediately dangerous but requiring treatment. They kept me for 48 hours, administered medication, installed a monitor. I was fine, would be fine with proper medication and regular checkups. But Marcus saw opportunity. He was at the hospital within an hour, having somehow convinced the nurses he was my healthcare proxy. He grilled the doctors about my condition, my prognosis, my mental state. Has he shown any confusion? Any memory issues? Any signs of cognitive decline? The doctor, to his credit, said, "Mr. Pennington is sharp as a tack. Probably healthier than men 20 years younger." Marcus's disappointment was visible even through my medicated haze. When I got home, the campaign intensified. Marcus and Victoria visited daily, treating me like an invalid. They'd speak slowly, repeat things, ask if I remembered conversations we'd just had. Marcus hired a nurse to check on me, though I suspected she was really there to document any signs of deterioration. He had Dr. Williamson, a geriatric psychiatrist who owed him money from bad investments, come for a social visit that was clearly an evaluation. I played along to a degree, curious to see how far they'd go. I'd occasionally forget someone's name, misplace my glasses, deliberately, ask the same question twice. Each incident was carefully noted by Marcus in a leather journal he didn't know I could see through my cameras. He was building a case for incompetence, documenting evidence that would support a conservatorship petition. On March 15, 2024, Victoria and Marcus came for their regular Friday dinner. I'd made beef Wellington, Eleanor's recipe that I'd perfected over 43 years of marriage. We ate in the formal dining room overlooking Narragansett Bay, making small talk about the market, their vacation plans to Santorini, anything but what was really on their minds. The wine was a 2010 Chateau Margaux, $1,200 a bottle, which Marcus drank like it was $2 chuck, not even letting it breathe. After dinner, I excused myself, claiming fatigue. The heart medication, I said, made me tired. They exchanged a look I was meant to miss, satisfaction mixed with anticipation. I went to my basement office, my command center as I'd come to think of it, and pulled up the feeds from the living room. It had become my Friday night ritual, watching them reveal themselves when they thought I wasn't there. At 8:43 p.m., Marcus poured himself a glass of my 1947 Chateau d'Yquem without asking. That bottle had been a gift from Eleanor for our 40th anniversary, one of only 3 remaining in private collections in New England. I'd been saving it for Victoria's first child, to toast the next generation. Marcus knew this. I'd told him the story. He didn't care. He sprawled on my leather couch, a $50,000 custom piece from Milan, his shoes still on, and pulled Victoria close. "We need to move faster," he said, swirling the priceless wine like it was grape juice. "Your father's health is declining, but he could linger for years. Do you know what memory care costs? It's $15,000 a month for a decent place. For someone like him, who'd need premium care, we're talking $30,000, maybe more. That's $360,000 a year just to keep a dying man comfortable. We can't afford to wait that long." Victoria shifted uncomfortably, her body language screaming discomfort even through the camera. "Marcus, he's my father. I don't like talking about him like this. Like he's a problem to be solved." "Like what?" "Like reality." Marcus laughed, that sharp bark that I'd come to recognize as his tell for cruelty. "Victoria, wake up. Your father is sitting on $92 million in liquid assets alone. That's not even counting the real estate, this house, the Beacon Hill townhouse, the Aspen Ski Lodge, the Miami penthouse. We're talking about $150 million total minimum. He's one man who's already lived his life. We're two people trying to start ours. The math is simple. The old man won't last much longer anyway, Marcus continued, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Maybe 6 months max, then it's all ours. But if he goes into a nursing home or needs extended care, that's millions burned on keeping a dying man alive. We need to act now, while he's still competent enough to sign documents, but confused enough not to understand them. What exactly are you suggesting? Victoria asked, her voice small, like the little girl who used to ask me to check for monsters under her bed. The papers I prepared. Power of attorney, living will with DNR orders, transfer of assets to a trust we control. He signs them thinking he's protecting his legacy. We manage everything, and when the time comes, we don't waste resources on futile care. It's actually merciful if you think about it. No tubes, no machines, no vegetative state. Just a peaceful passing. You make it sound like we're putting down a dog, Victoria said. That's harsh. I prefer to think of it as estate planning with compassion. Your father built an empire. Don't you think he'd want it preserved for his family rather than pissed away on medical bills? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then, and if he doesn't sign? Marcus smiled. I could see it clearly on the 4K monitor. Then we go with Plan B. Dr. Williamson owes me $300,000 from Cerberus Investments that went bad. He'll write whatever evaluation we need. Mild dementia, cognitive decline, inability to manage complex financial affairs. Your father's been forgetful lately, isolated, making questionable decisions. Did you know he spent $400,000 on a security system? That's paranoid behavior. It wouldn't be hard to build a case. You've really thought this through, Victoria said, and I couldn't tell if she was impressed or horrified. I've been thinking about it since our wedding day, Marcus admitted, finishing the priceless wine in one gulp. When I saw his financial disclosures for the prenup, I knew this was the real prize. Your trust fund is nice. $5 million is nothing to sneeze at. But it's nothing compared to what he's sitting on. $92 million in liquid assets alone, Victoria. Do you understand what that means? Properly invested, that's $7 million a year in returns without touching the principal. We could live like royalty. Our kids would never have to work. Hell, their kids would never have to work. Our kids, Victoria repeated. We don't even have kids yet. We've been trying for 2 years. We will. And when we do, they'll inherit an empire, not because we built it, but because we were smart enough to take it. Your father had his time. He made his fortune. This is ours. It's natural selection, the young replacing the old, the strong overtaking the weak. You're talking about my father like he's already dead. He might as well be. What's he doing with all that money? Sitting in this museum of a house, eating alone, watching the boats go by. He's not living, he's just existing. We'd be doing him a favor, really. Quick, painless, dignified. Better than rotting away in some nursing home, forgotten and confused. Jesus, Marcus. Do you hear yourself? I hear someone being practical instead of sentimental. Your father is 72 years old with a heart condition. He's already beaten the actuarial tables. Every day from here is borrowed time. Why should we sacrifice our prime years waiting for biology to take its course? Because he's my father, Victoria said weakly. No, Marcus corrected. He's an obstacle to your inheritance. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. I sat in my basement, my hands trembling not with age but with rage, watching my daughter nod slowly, accepting the logic of my disposal. The man I'd welcomed into my family, whose wedding I'd paid for, whose business I'd supported, was planning my death, financial if not physical, and my daughter, my only child, my miracle baby, was going along with it. But rage, I'd learned in 40 years of business, was only useful if channeled into action. I'd built a fortune by being 3 steps ahead of my competitors, by seeing attacks coming before they were launched, by turning opponents' strengths into weaknesses. Marcus Chun thought he was a wolf stalking a sheep. He was about to learn he was actually a mouse in a maze, and I controlled all the exits. I stayed up all night, reviewing footage from the past year with new eyes. The pattern became clear immediately. Marcus had been photographing my financial documents during visits, using his phone to capture account numbers, balances, investment portfolios. He'd been in my study during Thanksgiving, supposedly looking for a book, actually photographing my will. He'd installed something on my computer. I found the keystroke logger after a deep scan. He'd been tracking my every financial move for months. There were dozens of similar conversations recorded. Marcus discussing my life insurance policies with someone named Derek on the phone. 3 policies, total payout $20 million. And the beautiful part is they pay out even for natural causes after 2 years. We just need to make sure it looks natural. Another call to a realtor about my Newport house. Hypothetically, if it came on the market suddenly, what could we get? Cash deal, quick closing. The answer was $18 million, and Marcus had actually laughed with delight. The worst was a conversation from February where Marcus told someone, a woman whose voice I didn't recognize, the old man's daughter is useful for now, but once we have control of the estate, she's replaceable. Prenup has an infidelity clause, but only if proven. I've been careful. After the inheritance clears, I'll have options. My daughter wasn't even safe from him. She was just another asset to be leveraged and discarded. The next morning, Saturday, March 16th, I put my plan into motion. First, I called my lawyer, James Whitmore, who'd been with me for 30 years and had handled everything from my company's IPO to Eleanor's estate. Jim, I need to restructure everything. Complete overhaul. Every asset, every account, every document. And I need it done by Monday morning. Charles, that's 48 hours. The paperwork alone. You have 16 lawyers in your firm. Use them all. Bill me emergency rates. I don't care if it costs $1 million. I need this done. What's the urgency? I've got cancer, I lied smoothly. Pancreatic. 6 months at the outside. And my son-in-law is a vulture circling my corpse. I need everything moved before he knows what's happening. Jim didn't question it further. In our world, dying men did desperate things with their money, and lawyers got rich facilitating those desperate things. I'll have the entire team here within the hour. We'll work through the weekend. Next, I called Dr. Robert Harrison, my physician for 20 years. Robert, I need a favor. If anyone asks, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, metastasized to the liver. 6 months to live if I'm lucky. Can you make that happen on paper? There was a long pause. Charles, that's medical fraud. I could lose my license. No, it's theater. And I'll donate $10 million to your research foundation when the show is over. Plus another $5 million to the free clinic you run in Providence. That's $15 million. Consider it a performance bonus. How long do I have to live, doctor? 3 to 6 months. I'll have the diagnosis in the system by noon. Charles, what are you planning? Justice, Robert. Long overdue justice. By noon, I had a team of 8 lawyers in my study, drafting documents that would reshape my entire financial existence. The plan was elegant in its complexity, brutal in its completeness. Every asset would be transferred to a series of irrevocable trusts in the Cayman Islands, completely untouchable by U.S. courts. The house would be sold to a shell company I controlled in Delaware. The yacht, the cars, the art collection, everything would vanish into a labyrinth of legal structures that would take years and millions in legal fees to even attempt to untangle. But the masterpiece was the Pennington Family Trust, which would contain exactly $92 million, the the liquid portfolio Marcus had been salivating over. The catch? It could only be accessed for specific narrow purposes: medical care for me, defined as life-sustaining treatment only, educational expenses for biological grandchildren who didn't exist, and charitable donations to a pre-approved list of organizations. Victoria and Marcus would be named as trustees, able to see every penny, watch it grow, but unable to touch a cent for personal use. They could stare at $92 million every day for the rest of their lives and never spend a dollar. The trust had additional provisions that Jim called creatively vindictive. Any attempt to challenge the trust would trigger immediate dissolution, with all assets going to charity. Any criminal conviction of a trustee would result in immediate removal and replacement. Any divorce proceedings would freeze access for both parties until resolved. It was a golden cage, wealth they could see but never touch, forever just out of reach. While the lawyers worked, I had another task. I called Thomas Brennan, a private investigator who'd done opposition research for my company during hostile takeover attempts. Tom was former FBI, specialized in financial crimes, and had contacts everywhere that mattered. Tom, I need a complete workup on Marcus Chun. Financial, personal, criminal, everything. And I need it yesterday. Rush job will cost you. Bill me your yacht rate. I want to know everything: where he gets his coffee, who he's sleeping with, what he dreams about. If he's ever jaywalked, I want the date and time. Give me 12 hours. I also called Marcus's former colleagues at Goldman Sachs, men I'd done business with for decades. The head of compliance, Richard Blackstone, took my call immediately. Richard, I'm thinking of investing significantly in Cerberus Capital, Marcus Chen's fund. What can you tell me? The silence was deafening. Finally, Charles, this is off the record, but be very careful. Marcus left Goldman under complicated circumstances. How complicated? 8-figure complicated. Client funds that went missing and mysteriously reappeared during an audit. Trades that benefited him more than clients. Documents that didn't match signatures. We didn't prosecute because we couldn't prove intent, and frankly, we didn't want the publicity. But he's not someone I'd trust with lunch money, let alone real money. His fund now. I've heard rumors. Ponzi-like structures, using new investor money to pay returns to early investors. Classic scheme. If I were you, I'd run, not walk, away from Cerberus Capital. By evening, Tom Brennan had delivered his preliminary report. Marcus Chun was even worse than I'd imagined. The Ponzi scheme at Cerberus was real. He was juggling $30 million in investor money, robbing Peter to pay Paul, always one redemption away from collapse. He had 2 mistresses that Tom had identified, one in Miami, one in Los Angeles, both being paid through offshore accounts funded by Cerberus investor money. He had a cocaine habit that cost him $5,000 a month, supplied by a dealer who was under DEA surveillance. His Stanford MBA was real, but he'd been expelled from his first university for plagiarism, a fact scrubbed from his official biography. But the best part was his connection to organized crime. The Miami mistress was married to a lawyer who represented the Colombo crime family. Marcus had been using Cerberus to launder money for them, taking a 15% cut. The FBI had been building a case for 2 years, but hadn't connected all the dots yet. Tom had connected them in 12 hours. That evening, Victoria and Marcus came for dinner as planned. I'd told them I had important news about my health and estate. I looked the part of a dying man. My makeup artist from the company's old marketing department had aged me up with subtle shadows, a slight yellowing of the skin, a tremor in my hands that I'd practiced in the mirror. Marcus could barely contain his excitement, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Dad," Victoria said, tears in her eyes that might have been real, Dr. Harrison called us. "Why didn't you tell us about the cancer?" I coughed weakly, a pathetic sound I'd rehearsed. "I didn't want to burden you. But yes, it's true. 3 to 6 months, he says. Maybe less. The tumors are aggressive. Marcus leaned forward, trying to look concerned but unable to hide the calculation in his eyes. Charles, we need to discuss arrangements. Power of attorney, asset management, end-of-life care. I've prepared some documents. No need, I interrupted, my voice barely above a whisper. I've already handled everything. His face fell like a demolished building. What do you mean? I've established the Pennington Family Trust. Everything goes into it, all $92 million in liquid assets, plus the properties and collections. You and Victoria will be trustees, managing it for appropriate expenses and charitable work. It's all perfectly legal and completely irrevocable. Here are the documents. I slid the 2-inch thick folder across the table, watching Marcus's face as he read. His expression went from confusion to understanding to barely controlled rage. His jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. A vein in his temple pulsed visibly. Charles, he said, his voice strained, this ties up everything. We can't access any of it. Not for living expenses, not for investments, not for anything. Of course you can, I said innocently. For medical expenses, charity, education, all the things that matter. Unless, of course, you were planning to use it for something else. Victoria looked between us, sensing the tension. Dad, Marcus is just trying to help. Maybe we should discuss this more. There's nothing to discuss. It's done. Signed, sealed, filed with the court as of 3 p.m. today. Oh, and Marcus, I had an interesting call from Richard Blackstone today. He mentioned you left Goldman under unusual circumstances. Something about missing client funds. Marcus went pale, his California tan suddenly looking spray-painted on. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? Because I've also hired a forensic accountant to review Cerberus Capital's books. I'm sure everything will be in order, but given that you're managing my daughter's trust fund investments, I need to be certain. You understand. Of course, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Review anything you'd like. I will. Starting Monday morning. My team will need full access to all records, accounts, and correspondence. I'm sure that won't be a problem. The trap was sprung. Marcus knew that any investigation would reveal his fraud, but if he protested, he'd look guilty. He forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. No problem at all. The rest of dinner was Arctic in its coldness. Victoria kept looking at Marcus with confusion, then at me with something like suspicion. She knew something was happening, but couldn't quite grasp what. When they left, I heard Marcus in the driveway through my security system. The old bastard knows something. We need to move to Plan B immediately. What's Plan B? Victoria asked. Williamson declares him incompetent. We file for conservatorship. Take control of everything before he can hide it. Marcus, I don't think. Don't think. Just do what I tell you. Your father just put $92 million out of reach. We're not letting him get away with it. But I was already on Plan C. Or maybe it was D. I'd lost count of how many moves ahead I was. That night, I compiled everything, the security footage, the forensic accounting reports, the evidence of money laundering, the FBI's partial case file that Tom had somehow acquired. I packaged it all into a neat digital bundle, cross-referenced and annotated, a prosecutor's dream case wrapped in a bow. At exactly midnight, I sent it to 3 places: the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the SEC Enforcement Division, and the New York Attorney General's office. I also sent a copy to the Providence Journal, the Boston Globe, and the Wall Street Journal, embargoed until Monday afternoon. The media loves a good takedown story, especially when it involves Goldman Sachs alumni and elderly abuse. Sunday morning, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, I called Victoria. Sweetheart, can you come over? Alone? I have something important to discuss about your mother. She arrived at noon, looking exhausted. There were bags under her eyes, stress lines around her mouth. She looked 45 instead of 35. "Dad, what's going on?" "Marcus is acting crazy. He's talking about lawyers and contingencies and moving assets. He was on the phone all night with someone named Williamson." "Dr. Williamson?" "The psychiatrist who owes him $300,000. Her face changed. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything, Victoria. Including this." I played her the recordings. All of them. Hours of her husband planning her father's demise, discussing her eventual replacement, laughing about putting me in a home to die alone. She watched herself nod along to his plans, saw herself agree to deceive me, heard herself accept the logic of my disposal. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just sat there, aging 10 years in 10 minutes, her face cycling through disbelief, horror, shame, and finally, a kind of resigned devastation. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice hollow. "About Marcus's nature?" "Since Friday night." "About his criminal activities?" "Since yesterday afternoon." "About his mistresses in Miami and Los Angeles?" "About 6 hours." "About his money laundering for the Colombo family?" "About 3 hours." "Mistresses?" "Money laundering." She looked like she might vomit. "Your husband is running a Ponzi scheme through Cerberus. He's stolen approximately $30 million from investors. He's been laundering money for organized crime. He has 2 women he's supporting with stolen funds. He's also been planning to divorce you once he had control of my estate. You were, in his words, useful but replaceable. The cancer. Fake. I'm healthier than I've been in years. The heart episode was real but minor. Everything else was theater to smoke out his intentions. So the trust. Very real. Every penny is protected from him. From you too, frankly, unless you prove you deserve it. Marcus will be arrested tomorrow morning at exactly 9:15 a.m. at his office. The FBI will take him in front of his entire staff. The charges include wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and about 18 other federal crimes. He's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum. Victoria stood up abruptly, walked to the window overlooking the bay. A yacht was passing, probably heading to Martha's Vineyard. Normal people living normal lives while hers imploded. "You could have just told me," she said quietly. "Would you have believed me? You chose him, Victoria. You sat in my living room and nodded while he planned to steal everything I'd built. You were going to let him put me in a home to die alone while you spent my money." I was confused. He's very persuasive. He's a criminal. And you're either his accomplice or his victim. Which is it? She turned to face me, and for the first time in years, I saw Eleanor in her. Not the weakness I'd been enabling with money and comfort, but the steel her mother had when cornered, when the stakes were life or death. "I'm an idiot who married a sociopath. What do you need me to do?" "Divorce him immediately. Cooperate with the FBI. Testify if necessary. And earn back my trust, if that's even possible." Done. All of it. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't expect forgiveness." Good. Because you won't get it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But you're still my daughter, and that counts for something. There's $50,000 a year from the trust for your living expenses while you figure out your life. The rest depends on who you become without Marcus. She nodded, understanding the terms. He'll fight this. Let him try. I have 147 hours of recordings of him admitting to crimes. His fund is insolvent and will collapse Monday morning when the FBI freezes his accounts. His mistress in Miami is actually married to a mob lawyer who won't appreciate Marcus's attention. I've made sure he'll find out tomorrow. And by Monday afternoon, every major financial publication will have the full story. He's finished. What about Dr. Williamson? already arrested. Turns out he's been writing false competency evaluations for years in exchange for money. The FBI picked him up an hour ago. He's already trying to make a deal, offering to testify against everyone who paid him, including Marcus. Victoria sat back down, her legs seemingly unable to hold her. You planned all this in 48 hours? 43 hours, actually. I'm old, Victoria, not dead. And I've been destroying competitors since before Marcus was born. The arrest happened at exactly 9:15 a.m. on Monday, March 18th. I watched it live from the security feed I'd had installed in the Cerberus Capital offices. Perfectly legal, since I was now, technically, an investor through Victoria's trust fund that Marcus had illegally leveraged. The FBI agents, 6 of them in full tactical gear, walked in while Marcus was giving his Monday morning pep talk to his staff of 23 young analysts who thought they were working for the next Warren Buffett. Marcus Chun, the lead agent, announced, his voice carrying across the trading floor, "You're under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and violations of the RICO Act." Marcus tried to run. Actually tried to sprint for the emergency exit in his $3,000 Italian suit and handmade shoes. He made it about 10 feet before an agent tackled him into a desk, sending monitors and keyboards flying. They cuffed him face down on the carpet he bragged cost $500 a square foot, reading him his rights while his employees filmed on their phones. By noon, the video was viral. Goldman Sachs alum arrested in spectacular takedown. Hedge fund founder tackled by FBI in front of staff. Son-in-law's $92 million elder abuse scheme exposed. The financial Twitter was having a field day. Someone made a meme of Marcus's tackle with the caption, "When your Ponzi scheme meets reality." It got 2 million views in 3 hours. The newspapers hit at 2 p.m. The Wall Street Journal's headline, "The son-in-law who thought his father-in-law was dying. How a security system exposed a $92 million fraud." The Boston Globe went with Newport man record son-in-law planning his death, sends him to prison instead. The Providence Journal, bless them, chose local defense contractor turns tables on criminal son-in-law in elaborate sting. But the best part came during Marcus's bail hearing at 4 p.m. The prosecutor, a young woman named Sarah Chun, no relation, she made clear, played my security footage in open court. The entire financial world heard Marcus laugh about my impending death, plan to fake my dementia, call me the old man with such contempt that even his own lawyer, a $2,000 an hour defender of white-collar criminals, visibly winced. "Your Honor," Sarah Chun said, "the defendant shows a callous disregard for human life, has the means and motive to flee, and has connections to organized crime that make him a flight risk. We request remand." The judge, a 78-year-old woman who probably saw herself in my story, agreed. Bail is set at $5 million cash, surrender of passport, ankle monitoring, and no contact with Charles or Victoria Pennington. Marcus couldn't make bail. All his assets were frozen, his investors were demanding their money back, and his crime family connections had disappeared the moment the FBI got involved. He spent the next 6 months in Rikers Island awaiting trial, where a Harvard MBA with soft hands and a Goldman Sachs pedigree did not fare well. Victoria filed for divorce that same Monday afternoon, citing fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Because of the prenup Marcus had insisted on, protecting his non-existent wealth from her, he got nothing. The trust fund investments he'd been managing were recovered, mostly intact thanks to the quick freeze. The rest of his assets, what little actually belonged to him, went to paying back Cerberus investors. The criminal trial began in September. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. My recordings, the FBI's financial evidence, testimony from 16 defrauded investors, Dr. Williamson's confession, and even testimony from one of Marcus's mistresses who revealed he'd promised to marry her once he had my money. The defense tried to argue entrapment, that I'd manipulated Marcus into revealing his plans. The jury deliberated for exactly 43 minutes, including lunch. Guilty on all counts. The judge, calling it one of the most callous cases of attempted elder abuse she'd ever seen, sentenced Marcus to 22 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for 15. He was also ordered to pay $30 million in restitution, which he'll never have, and banned from ever working in finance again, which hardly matters from a federal cell. His family disowned him publicly. His mother, a dignified woman who'd worked 3 jobs to put him through Stanford, wrote an op-ed in the Los Angeles Times apologizing to me and to all his victims. "I raised him better than this," she wrote. "Somewhere my son lost his way, choosing greed over gratitude, wealth over wisdom. Mr. Pennington showed more mercy than Marcus deserved by not pursuing attempted murder charges. Even his triathlon team expelled him, citing conduct unbecoming of an athlete. The Stanford Alumni Association revoked his membership. Goldman Sachs issued a statement distancing themselves from their former employee. The financial industry basically erased him from existence. Victoria and I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. She moved into a small apartment in Providence's East Side, got a job at Rhode Island Legal Services helping elderly people protect themselves from financial exploitation. Ironic, but appropriate. She started therapy twice a week with a therapist who specialized in cult deprogramming, because that's essentially what Marcus had done, created a cult of wealth with him as the prophet. She sent me letters, actual handwritten letters, every Sunday. Not asking for forgiveness, just updating me on her efforts to become someone worthy of trust. She volunteered at nursing homes, reading to residents who had no visitors. She taught financial literacy at community centers, warning about predators like Marcus. She attended a support group for people who'd been manipulated by narcissists, where she had to confront her own role in enabling Marcus's behavior. After 6 months, I started responding to her letters. After a year, we had dinner. After 18 months, she earned limited access to the trust, enough to buy a modest house, start a college fund for the children she might have someday with someone worthy of her. The $92 million is still there, growing at about 8% annually, waiting for her to fully earn it or for grandchildren who'll hopefully inherit Eleanor's wisdom along with my wealth. I kept the security system running, upgraded it actually. Not because I distrust Victoria, she's proven herself, but because trust is earned daily, not given permanently. The cameras record everything, store it forever, a permanent record of truth in a world full of performance. Marcus performed the loving son-in-law for 2 years, and I almost believed it. Never again. Last week was the 5th anniversary of Eleanor's death. Victoria and I visited her grave together for the first time since the funeral. She brought daffodils, Eleanor's favorite, grown in her own small garden. Mom would have seen through Marcus immediately, Victoria said. She would have destroyed him at the wedding reception, I agreed. Remember when she made that senator cry during the defense appropriations hearing? She accused him of war profiteering and had the receipts to prove it. He actually sobbed on C-SPAN. We laughed, the first real laugh we'd shared in years. I miss her, Dad. So do I. Every day. But she left me one last gift, paranoia that saved my life. The security system? The suspicion. She always said I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people. Charles, she'd say, people will show you who they are if you just watch and listen. So I watched. I listened. And Marcus showed me exactly who he was. Victoria nodded. I'm dating someone new. A teacher. Middle school science. Makes $52,000 a year and thinks a fancy dinner is Olive Garden. Drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner. His name is David. Bring him by. I'll make beef Wellington. He's vegetarian. Even better. Anyone who chooses principles over pleasure might actually have some. Marcus, prisoner #38474-001 at FCI Fort Dix, writes me letters sometimes. Not apologies, he's incapable of those, but rambling manifestos about how I destroyed him, how he was just being smart, how everyone would have done the same in his position. I forward them unopened to Victoria. She has a ritual now. Every month, she burns them in her backyard fire pit while drinking a glass of the wine Marcus pretended to appreciate but never understood. Last month, she sent me a photo from the burning. "Destroying the past to build a future," she'd written on the back. I framed it, put it next to the last photo of Eleanor and me, dancing at Victoria's law school graduation when we still believed she'd use her education for good. She is now, just took a 20-year detour through hell first. The $92 million sits in its trust, protected and waiting. Some days I think about releasing it all to Victoria, proving I trust her completely. But then I remember Marcus's laugh. The old man won't last much longer, and I keep the protection in place. Not because I don't forgive her, but because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Marcus was wrong about one thing. I've lasted much longer than he expected. I'm 75 now, healthier than I was at 70, probably good for another 15 years at least. He'll be 67 when he gets out of prison, if he survives it. I'll likely still be here, watching from my monitors, the old man who lasted long enough to see justice served. The security system recorded everything, saved everything, proved everything. But the real security was never the cameras. It was the wisdom Eleanor tried to teach me, the suspicion she begged me to maintain, the understanding that when large sums of money are involved, even family can become strangers. Or maybe they were always strangers, and the money just revealed it. Either way, I'm alive. Marcus is in prison, Victoria is rebuilding, and the $92 million is safe from everyone except time and taxes. The old man won. The old man survived. The old man is still recording, still watching, still waiting for the next person to underestimate him. They always do. And I always win. Thank you for listening to today's story of justice served ice cold. Look at your screen right now. The left video shows another family betrayal exposed. The right video reveals a $50 million revenge. Both will restore your faith in karma. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow's story will shock you even more. Remember, respect your elders, or become the next cautionary tale.